Hello everybody, it's me, Miss Reed. In WAC today we are doing about the Stone Age again, and we are thinking about homes. What do these houses in this picture here have that keeps their owners warm? Let's have a look at these pictures, let's have a think. I'm looking at the outsides, I'm looking at the tops, I'm looking at things that are involved. You can have a think at home. I'm thinking about roofs, I'm thinking about bricks, the materials that we use to coat and cover those houses, the paints. I'm thinking about whether or not it's waterproof. I'm thinking about central heating, a fire inside perhaps, maybe the ovens that they're running, electricity for lighting. There's loads of things that these houses have that keep their owners warm. But did the people in the Stone Age have all these things? Well, they may have had roofs, and they may have indeed had walls, and they may have indeed had fires, but they definitely didn't afford all of the luxuries we had. We're going to be having a look even closer into housing in the Stone Age, or what we call dwellings. That is like our homes. And we're going to be comparing Stone Age houses and dwellings to modern, that means today, in our own dwellings, our own houses. And at the end, we're going to have a challenge to make our own Stone Age dwelling. I'll talk to you a bit more about that in a second. But first, we're going to think about the different types of housing that people had in the Stone Age and how they used it, and how it's changed over the years. It's a really exciting, really interesting topic. So, were the houses in all three stages of the Stone Age the same? Newsflash, they were not. As people developed and evolved and grew and changed, they learned different things and they learned different skills. So, why might they have changed and developed? Because we got new technology, we had different tools, and we had different abilities to make dwellings, houses, shelters that were really helpful and useful and worked for us at the time. So we started off pretty small, pretty simple, and they got more complicated as we learnt more. And I'm sure that those people passed down their knowledge to each other in the Stone Age. They said, oh, well, this works really well, and this doesn't work really well, and this seems to keep us warm, and this doesn't seem to keep us warm. And that is part of how people change and develop now as well. We learn from each other, we learn from experimenting and experiencing, and as we get more tools and more skills, we get better at these sorts of things, which is awesome. So, why might they have changed and developed? Because as we learn, we can. And who remembers what we call the oldest stage of the Stone Age? What is the oldest era of the Stone Age? It is the Paleolithic era. This was from 3 blah, 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 to 10 blah, before Christ. Cool. And the first step of Stone Age homes were caves. That's the first thing they had. Before anything else, they had caves. You can see on here there's some beautiful cave paintings, wonderful, helpful cave paintings, decorations that were interesting. And these caves came in all shapes and sizes. Some caves were really big, some caves were really small, some have different compartments. Some they may have chiseled and mined out. Some they may have left as they were. They could use the rocks and arrange the rocks in a way that made it safe and that they had things to sit on and hold that made it useful for them at the time. Did they need many tools to make this home? Not really, no. They wouldn't have had to do anything except from bring bits of dry brush to sleep in. They may have also brought wood to burn as a fire. They may have, as I said, rearranged stones or logs that they found outside to make their house more fitting. But these caves were naturally made shelters, usually, and this helped keep them safe and protected. But they could have, again, edited the insides of those caves to make tunnels and things. This can be very dangerous, though, and I imagine that many Stone Age men and women learnt this over time and decided that they would rather not chisel away at a cave that could collapse on them. But we have lots of evidence of wonderful Stone Age cave paintings and drawings and artwork, and also remnants left behind of where their homes used to be, which can really help show us where they were and what they did at those times. Really cool. That's why it's a really useful home. That was Paleolithic era. In the Mesolithic era, they used sticks or bones covered in animal fur or skin or grass. And we can see that in these pictures here. They're so detailed and delicate. They have a wonderful mixture of being safe, being contained, and also being movable and able to put them up anywhere. You can see that they can use rocks to weigh them down. They could layer things over them. They could be waterproof if layered up really well. And some of these bones, like you can see on the one on the left there, they're huge, massive, and they would have made really good defenses. They'd have been very strong and resilient like our bricks are. And you can see the furs on the top. Again, these are waterproof. They would have defended them really well, but they would have kept it quite dark in there and kept a lot of smoke in. So these homes really quick and easy to put together, almost like teepees, you can see, by leaning wood up against other pieces of wood. Again, these would have happened near the trees, under the forest, and I'm sure you talked about them with Miss Sharrett when we were doing about development of them. But what tools might they use? What tools might they have needed to have created these homes? I don't think they would have used really many tools at all. We're very lucky that we can see these here. It's mostly cutting down the wood that would have been hard, but you might have found it fallen around. Tools such as weapons to kill animals and hunt animals, that we could have used those things from. But again, this is part of their scavenging and hunting. So in the Mesolithic stage, they wouldn't have need to have cut down a lot of things, although they may have been using sort of sewing needles for furs and to create materials. They could also use what was already in their environment. So as their tools have developed, they have been able to create more stable shelters and better defended, more waterproof shelters to keep them safe and dry. So cool. Oh, we can see here in the Neolithic stage how different it is. They've got stones and woven sticks covered in daub. So that's wattle and daub. And we're going to talk about that in just a second. And they covered the roofs with straw or turf. So similar to our teepees, these are now looking even more like the homes that we have now. We've got a wonderful detailed stone structure with stones that they found around all built up and laid up. Incredible. We've got huts that are now able to stand on their own with wooden structure and roofs that hang. We've got almost cave-like structures with actual turf and ground and grass growing over the top of them there as well. And these are all real, actual Neolithic stage houses made in the way that they would have been. When we did about Skara Brae, we explained about this as well. These are all, again, brilliant defenses against wind, sun, the cold. They would have held in heat really well. They'd have been very well insulated, and they'd have also stayed warmer in general because of the materials that they've used, and be waterproof too, just like the similar ones from the Mesolithic era. But yeah, you can see the wattle and daub. I'm going to show you how it works. It's really cool. So wattle and daub is made up of woven sticks, straw, clay, mud, water, and poo. Yeah, they use manure to make daub. It's really cool. They weave all these sticks together. They waft them around each other, and that's the wattle part. That's what they call it. They do a woven lattice. They might do in more of the Tudor times. And the daub is a mixture of all those materials: straw, clay, mud, water, and poo, mixed together, stomped down on, scrunched up, and basically flung and pushed into the gaps in between. And it just sort of clogs the holes. You can do these yourself at home without using poo if you'd like. The poo is used as a binding agent, what helps it hold still when you've got cracks and things in the when it dries and it cracks. It helps it hold onto the building because it creates a wonderful barrier against wind and the elements like rain once it's dry, which is really cool, really clever. So much like, very similar to how we make bricks, which is mixtures of clay and other materials that are coarse, sometimes sands and things as well, and they're heated up really highly. Of course, they weren't able to heat things up really highly at this time, so they would use the weather, the sun itself, to dry out this sort of walling, which was made of all these materials. And you can see an example here on the right. This was made by some children at another school who got the wattle made using straws and haze, instead of a typical hazel wattle, which is the one that's on the left here, which can be made with just normal sticks or different types of flexible wood. and then wrapped it in that clay and mud and water. And the straw again helps it to hold really firm. If it's got poo in, it's extra strong, but it can be very gross. So I can understand if you didn't want to use that. Usually it's horse manure or cow manure they used to use, just for your information, really. And here are some examples of modern thatched houses, which is a style that has been used, as you've seen now, for many hundreds of thousands of years, which was a really quick way of throwing these houses together and keeping them easily defended. We still use thatched roofings, roof made of straw that can be cut down to different lengths to keep it protected from water. Of course, this does need to be replaced at some point and be edited and changed, because it does fall down and it does break when the elements are really strong or violent, or just over a really long period of time. But this hay, this straw, this mud, and usually lime, it can be used as well to fill in the gaps and create that white colour that you see sometimes on a wattle and daub house, that makes it really strong and really powerful. But it's very interesting to think that all the way back in the Stone Age, they were using techniques that we still use today to make shelters really quickly, simply, that are good at holding in heat, that are protected from the elements, from water, and kept them safe, and were easy to put up themselves without a huge number of tools. In fact, usually the daub material itself was made by mixing all these things together and stamping and squishing it all together as a big group. They just make it on the floor right next to the house and stomp it all around and then shove it up on the walls, literally taking big handfuls and clobs that they make into big balls called cats, and throwing it at it and pushing it into those gaps and filling it in. Wattle and daub is a really cool and fun process. It's really interesting. Let's think about how these people in the Stone Age would live in these houses. What were they actually like? So how many rooms did all these Stone Age houses have? Usually, it was just one big room. There's no point in putting walls in. It's not like they would hide from each other. They didn't have anything to put away. They would probably go to the toilet outside. They didn't have a bathroom, and they would all be slept in the same room. We need to remember what don't these houses have that might be useful. They didn't have windows, and they didn't have holes in the roof to let out smoke from their fires. So these houses, these shelters, would have been very smoky, would have been very dusty, and they'd have needed to clean them quite regularly. And in the nighttime, they would have been very dark, except from the light of a fire. So we can assume that they would use them for cooking, perhaps eating if the weather was really bad, but mostly for sleeping and hiding and sewing and things that they wouldn't need to have to see too well, because it would be very dark in there and potentially very smoky. What's the importance or significance of having a house? It's really important to have a house or home. Again, we've been talking about it already, that protection, you're being safe from the weather. The weather can be really bad, it can be really cold and really hot, and you can be protected by the shade, but also by by keeping yourself cool, and also by keeping yourself warm, for example, using fire. Really lucky to have fire. But houses in general, it's a home, it's a place to be together with your family. And we have to imagine that it would have been very much the same for those people in the Stone Age working with their tribes as well. What things would these houses need to include to be useful? Yes, they would need fire to be useful. Yes, they would probably need somewhere to sleep, maybe some hay, maybe somewhere to lay down. They would need something that other tools, such as their hammers and things to keep it all together. They would need bowls and things to use to eat still. And these are places that they could keep those belongings, those possessions that otherwise might not be carried with them on their nomadic way of life, as they are often traveling, hunting and gathering so that their resources don't run out. Really cool to think about how important these houses were, how easy they were to put up, and how easy they were to knock down. They're really useful for them to be able to move quite quickly and put something together quite quickly as well. Our challenge today, as I said earlier, is to make our own Stone Age house. What stage, what era will your house be from? The Paleolithic, the Mesolithic, the Neolithic? And how will you stop it from falling apart? So if you're trying to make a cave, you might be using lots of different materials, but they're naturally formed. You don't really need to do a lot to use a cave as a house. And we're going to look at some ideas of how to create those things now, okay? But yeah, thinking about houses, we want to remember that it was very complicated for them to be able to move around and to travel the way they did. and we need to think about the difficulties they might have faced with their tools at the time that maybe don't affect us now. Let's have a look. So, for example, here's a sheet full of ideas of how you can make your own Stone Age dwelling. You can do this by using the stone, barks, and twigs and leaves you find in your own garden. You can use moss. There was a brilliant insulator that keeps it nice and warm inside. You can use literal twigs. You can pull up the ground. You might use clay. You may use Play-Doh if you don't want to go outside and get dirty if it's a bit wet out there. You could do some painting or some junk modeling. Maybe you've got some plastic left over. I've got a lovely example on the right here where they've taken some stones and they've stuck them all around the outside of an old jug or an old bottle. It makes a really, really interesting sort of features with all those stones layered together. Maybe in the Stone Age time they would have used mud. We can use glue. That's fine. You could do paper mache, like I said, using paper and glue to layer it up, maybe painting something, maybe doing a drawing if you don't have any materials you can use. Sorry, and after you're finished, you can write a small paragraph all about this lovely Stone Age house you've built. So thinking about what era you've done it in, you might want to explain what era it is. You might want to say what materials it would be made from if it was made in the Stone Age, and what tools you might have used if it was made in the Stone Age. But you can just make it yourself and make it as ridiculous and cool as you can now if you would like to. Remember, like I said, it's usually only one room, and it's usually one quite big room, and it's often a round room, as that was quite a lot easier to build at the time, quicker to stand up. But not always. There are, of course, some square rooms and things. And using stones, you can get some really strong structures, like this one on the right over here as well. You can stack up pebbles almost like a brick wall would be, without even having to put daub or glue in between them. So maybe you want to have a go at trying to make something yourself, Andy Goldsworthy style, and sticking it all outside, or maybe even inside your own home. If you've not got the resources to make your dream Stone Age house, you can draw your design up and maybe do it another time if you'd like to. But I'd love for you to still write a paragraph describing and explaining your house, and why it would have been a good Stone Age dwelling. What about it makes it really great? We've talked about the different things they would use to cover their houses. Were they made from bones? Were they made from sticks? Did they use wattle and daub as a technique to keep it safe? Have they maybe woven things together to make them stronger and better to defend themselves against the weather? Have they used something on their grass, maybe a resin from a tree to protect it? Think about what they could have done to make it a really strong, really safe, really awesome Stone Age dwelling, okay? So the second part of your challenge, after you've made your wonderful Stone Age dwelling or designed it, you can use the suggestions from the sheet to write a little paragraph, a couple of sentences about why your house is the best. For example, here's my teeny tiny Stone Age houses here. You can see they are made from paper and leaves and some straw and some bits stuck on. And I've taken a photo of them outside because it looks cuter that way. But I've said here, I've written a little paragraph to describe them. I've put, my houses are from the Mesolithic era. So I'm explaining what era they would have been from by the style they were made in. They're perfect for relaxing in, and they're created from sticks, stones, straw, and leaves, carefully layered and woven together. They provide perfect protection from the elements and are quick and easy to construct. You may want to add something about protection, about shelter, about safety. You could talk about how it's part of a settlement, a larger number of people. You might want to say, it's wonderful to explore around the area. It's great to experience sewing together the furs to create a detailed roof. You could talk about how it's waterproof, how it's insulated. You might use words to describe adjectives that are really exaggerated. If you want to make your house seem super cool, to convince me that you've really put thought into how lovely Stone Age people may have lived. You can compare it to your own house if you would like, as a little bit of a bonus challenge. But yeah, remember all those different features that they've used. If you're making a cave or something, again, you can use all of the same materials. You could design it, you could draw it. You can maybe think about where the fire could go inside as well. It's a really good idea. But I'm really excited to see what you sort of come up with for your wonderful Stone Age house. I'm sure you've got lots of awesome ideas and are going to create something really beautiful and amazing. And don't worry if you can't do it now, take your time with it. We'll love to see the pictures whenever you got them. And we'd love to see and hear about your designs now and your explanation of why you have created a Stone Age house from that period and what materials you might have used. Good luck, have fun. And yeah, I'm sure there's going to be some really beautiful things that come out. Wattle and Daub, attached, there are 5 videos that you can go look up to see how they're made with wattle and daub, and you can try to do something similar yourself in your garden if your parents say that's okay. If not, don't worry about it, but it is a really cool process that we still use today, so it's worth learning about. Again, there's links all up on the website. There's also some things that you could print and cut off if you're worried about making your own house that might help you out on that step of the way. Again, there's ideas on there if you're stuck. If not, go give it a go and just do your best. I'm sure you're going to come up with something amazing. See you soon.